So I'm just going to introduce myself before we start. So my name is Levin Mohammed, and I'm one of the program and event coordinators at Studio 89 in Mississauga, which is basically a youth-led nonprofit that focuses on empowering and mobilizing youth for social justice and the arts. So I'm very honored to be able to come here and moderate this panel. And what I do in the sense of for this panel is that we're going to talk about 3 different discussion blocks in comparison to or in the topic of anti-Black racism. So I'm going to give you guys a brief itinerary interview, and then we're going to introduce our lovely panelists for today. And our discussion blocks will be the historical context of anti-Black racism, the current day manifestations of anti-Black racism, and then the considerations to make to end anti-Black racism. And these are not like separate panels that we're gonna have, but more like topics so we can lead the discussion forward. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our wonderful panelists for today. And I'm gonna start with Fatma Kanu.
Yeah, Kanu.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
She was born and raised in Freetown, Sierra Leone, and she's a trained teacher. She holds a Bachelor's of Arts degree from the University of Maryland and a Master's degree from Boston University. She has worked in her home country and abroad in various positions. So she was a teacher, a library clerk at the undergraduate and graduate libraries in Edmonton, an acquisitions agent for the Library of Congress, and a research assistant, a city councilor, and a cross-cultural facilitator for new immigrants in Vancouver. And she has published 3 books, which are amazing, that are based on her experience across the world. So 3 of them is a 2008 publication called Through the Calabash, which is about her memoirs and reflection on growing up in Sierra Leone. The Taste of the Cola Nut, 2014, that was published, and it's about transitioning across cultures. And lastly, The Rock Behind the Waterfall, which is published in 2014, and it's about an insider's view of diplomatic life. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
So the second person joining us will be Norma Nicholson. She is a 3-time published author, speaker, educator, youth, and adult mental health advocate. Ms. Nicholson is a retired RN with a BA in sociology and psychology and an MA in adult education. She is a recognized public speaker, a part-time lecturer at the Sheridan College, who also managed healthcare in a variety of healthcare sectors, including the largest Ontario sector, secure youth custody facility. Her active community services are as follows. So she's a past president of the Registered Nurses Association and the Alzheimer's Society of Peel, the board advisory to Free for All Foundation and Homeless Strategy in the Peel region, and she's currently a member of the Police Services Board. Thank you for joining us, Norma. And last but not least, here we have is Colin MacLean. As our certified adult and continuing education trainer, Colin MacLean sculpts and forges learners' minds for success, using easy-to-follow systems that allow them to start building their lives that they want to envision. With 20 plus years of business experience, he spent more than half of the years working in employment counseling, job development, recruiting, and employment services marketing. He's published a self-help guide entitled A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Career, 50 Practical Rules to Get the Job That You Want, which uses humor to help job seekers hone their skills that they need to find work, despite living in challenging economic times. So Colin has since developed creative online and in-person lectures or courses, and facilitates workshops and delivers presentation for at-risk youth and young adults. Thank you for joining us, Colin.
Thank you.
So we're gonna start off with our first discussion block, which is the historical context of anti-Black racism. So basically what I wanted to do is that I wanted to start with this first because we love looking at Black history and et cetera, but we don't really take in the struggles that historical Black figures went through to achieve success. So I think we're going to start off with some questions, and the first question I have is, anti-Black racism is felt on a multi-generational level. So our ancestors, our grandparents, and our parents felt its repercussions, and our generation and future generations will be feeling the same. So my first question is, how have you grown to define Blackness from your youth until now? So who would like to start?
I can start. I'm Norma. I was born on the island of Jamaica. And at that time, many moons ago, the island was colonized, meaning it was run by British, all Caucasian. So for a black individual, you did not have as many opportunities. So though I had high school graduation and I did very well in high school and got very high marks, when I graduated, I could not get a job because the job was given to Caucasians, like high-profile jobs, they call those in banks. Even in bookstores, you could not get a job. So from a very young age, I started defining myself as being black does not seem to allow many opportunities, no matter how much one works. So skip forward, and I came to Canada as a domestic worker in the late 60s. And in Canada, there continues to be many opportunities for education. And so I've gained a registered nurse. I went to U of T full time. I got my master's degree, and yet I found that being black was still outstanding for me. And I'll just give a very quick example. I managed healthcare in an ambulatory setting, an outpatient setting, where folks would come in from their home to get a variety of therapies. There was a gentleman who came quite early one morning, and I walked by and say hi, he's Caucasian, and he was quite upset because he had been coming early and there's no physiotherapist or anyone to see him. What he did not realize was that the department was open at 9 and he came from 8:30. So what he demanded was that one of the staff go and get the head nurse. And I went back and explained that I was speaking to him and I am the head nurse. And he says, you cannot be the head nurse. You need someone with all those high-level skills to be a head nurse. I'd like to talk to your boss. And then I explained that I do not have a boss. I am in charge of the department and make all the decisions. So going back to the question, my blackness was designed for me from I was a youth, and it has not gone away, but I've done a lot of things that has made me proud being a black person. Yeah.
In my youth, I cannot define blackness for me in my youth because I grew up in a predominantly black community in Sierra Leone in Africa. I come from Sierra Leone in West Africa, and Caucasians and other people who lived there came there to work or as you say, they were in high-profile positions. But since the country is predominantly black, I did not really have a sense of discrimination, or not being able to access any of the things that I needed, to either to go to school or all of those things. So in my youth, blackness was not a definitive thing for me until I came to Canada. And then when I came to Canada, I realized from what we had been reading in school or we hear about America, like they used to have this racism, and you read it in books and you hear about it. It manifested itself for the first time to me when I came to Canada, and it was in the workplace. Like she said, I was working for the provincial laboratory at the University of Alberta, and there was a lady there who just thought that I could not do the work. So when there was, just because I was black, I never knew this, that people could profile you like that. But whenever there is a problem or there was a mistake, she will automatically say, report that it was me. It happened a few times. I used to be so disturbed, I go home and I can't sleep, but I know maybe I did what I was supposed to do, but every time she was proved wrong. Every time she was proved wrong. So that was the first time, that I started to say, okay, now I am here, I belong, to a group. I belong to a minority. And it doesn't matter where I come from, whether I come from Africa or whether I come from the Caribbean. As long as you are black, I start to think about myself as somebody who has to identify with those people. And I am black. And that's how I came to realize it. And you have to pay attention to it. And get around the people that are black so that at least you know what's going on and know how to react when you get these kinds of things.
Good. Thank you. So that's a great question. For me, my blackness is defined on my 3 principles, and that's grow, overcome, and achieve. And I learned that from my parents. And that happened to me when I had a learning disability in school, and I was failing grade 4. And my parents told me how to learn, grow, overcome, and achieve. And by operating at the high standards, I was able to overcome, and my marks went from F's then to pretty much A's in the end. So I go in the corporate world, and if there was going to be a spiritual animal for corporate world, it was going to be the pink elephant. I was the pink elephant in the room, whereby no one else was of West Indian background or was black. It was all Caucasian, British import-export firm. So a lot of times they ask me, well, you're different. How come you don't sound black? How come you don't act black? Now the challenge I had for them was they're using television or the media to portray a certain person that they don't really understand. Stereotypes, exactly. Mm-hmm. And we all know that it's getting a bit better, the media, but back in my days of like the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, it was portrayed kind of poorly. So by me growing and overcoming and achieving, I was able to bring a positive image. They took me under their wing. So I'm going into corporate meetings to tell me how to network. I'm going to those meetings where only white men can go into, and the guys falling asleep by the fireplace, and we're having the lobster and the shrimp and all that stuff. I've been there, and why? Because I'm the kind of guy that's growing and overcoming. So I transitioned myself into the not-for-profit, and I found there's a lot of people who had some challenges whereby they didn't believe they could succeed, and that's why they're unemployed, and the racism stuff was happening to them consistently. But then I had to tell them, grow, overcome, and achieve. And when we started doing that, it didn't matter pretty much their circumstance. They started excelling. So that's what I teach. So my blackness is based on growing, overcoming, and achieving, and then that's what I lead by. I don't go by just my skin. It's my actions that speak louder than my words or my skin.
Definitely. Thank you guys for your answers. And I was going to wait until I have commentary at the end. Mm-hmm. And I saw one main good point that I wanted to speak upon, which is discrimination making you realize your blackness. Because like you said, like in the sense of coming from a majority where black people were everywhere in terms of coming and becoming a minority, or else somebody pointing out that, oh, you don't act black, etc. Yeah. I feel like those two experiences I may not have necessarily experienced being from majority to minority because I was born in Canada, but I've really felt the experience of saying, oh, you're not black enough, etc. Being born in Mississauga is very painful. But like it's really like eye-opening to see that it's not until you're discriminated against or you're pinpointed out to other people is that when you realize, hey, I'm black actually, like I'm not part of like other people, etc. So it's really like discouraging, and hopefully, like you said, it's getting better in terms of representation, but there's still a lot of way to go. Yeah. But yeah, thank you guys for your answers. So I'm gonna head into the next question.